was just a reminder to me to emphasize the importance of this book. This is what we call our Bible, and it has tons of important information in it. Potentially you could completely tune out to trainings and workshops and emails from me and run the program as long as you read and digest that book. It's dense enough so that you won't retain much of it on a first read, but you should read it through initially just so that you know what's in there. And that way, if you say, oh, I remember there was something in the manual about release days, you can go back when it's appropriate. For now, it's really the setup information and the early care information that you will want to pay attention to. Some of you have brand new equipment. Some of you are inheriting equipment from a previous teacher. And the equipment takes different forms. We have standardized our package for now, but 3 years ago the standard package was a little different. We are trying to balance performance, ease of setup, and cost as we do this. But I have a couple of slides that I want to show you quickly about the two basic types of setups that you're likely to find. Both of them, in the case of these slides, utilize a 55-gallon tank. But not all of you have 55-gallon tanks. So don't worry. You can run this in a 20-gallon tank if you want to. You just need to change the proportions. If we say use this amount of ammonium chloride for a 55-gallon tank, you've got to do the math to figure out how much you need for a 20-gallon tank. Same goes with the bacterial additives and the other things that we're looking at here. The critical pieces of equipment, besides the tank, are the chiller, the filter, and the aerator. And that's in descending order how expensive they are. The chiller costs $625, I think, Bob, is that right? Currently? Yeah. The filter is about $100 or less these days, and the aerator is, $20 or $25. The chiller has to keep your tank cold, especially in the early stages of the process, but it's always going to be colder than room temperature. Brook trout would die in room temperature water. There are two types of chillers. There is what's called the flow-through chiller, and that's like an external refrigerator with hoses. One hose is allowing a device that's in the tank to pump water into the chiller and through the chiller back into the tank. So, and one of the risks associated with the flow-through chiller is leakage, because theoretically you could end up with 55 gallons of water on the floor if you had a failure. The other type of chiller is a drop-in chiller, and this is much safer. There's an external unit that provides the cooling, but there's a hose attached to a copper coil that's in your tank, and there's no water being pumped out of the tank in that process. So it is both simpler to set up and safer in terms of potential failures, and it also is now cheaper, we find. And the aerators are aerators. Some people call them bubblers, and some people use more than one. There is a very successful Trout in the Classroom program in Pownell, Mike Carano, and he uses 2 aerators and 2 filters. I don't know anyone else who's doing that, but there's no harm in that as far as I know. So, the drop-in chiller. I tried to describe it. Here's an image of it. It is this is the business end of the drop-in chiller, and the cooling unit sits externally. This is the filter intake, right? And do you notice that it's got kind of a little sack on it? Very, very important. One of these years we're going to have nobody forget to put the covering on the filter intake. But so far, at least one teacher has forgotten and come in the morning on a Monday and discovered that, you know, some otter must have eaten all her fish because they're gone. They were there Friday, they're gone. Well, it turns out they're now living in the filter, or they're now dead in the filter. This is the filter output. We recommend putting things that have input and output on the opposite end. This is the aerator. That's an analog thermometer. That's a digital thermometer. Most of you just have a digital thermometer. That's the breeder basket. That's where your eggs will start their life. This is the flow-through, or in this case it can also be called inline chiller. So now this is the box that there's a device here called the power head or the pump that is sucking water out of the tank, pushing it into that white box and forcing it out of the white box. It gets cooled, of course, in the white box. That's the power head. That is an aerator, I guess. That is the filter intake, and in this case, the filter is hanging on the side of the box, on the side of the tank. Most of you will have that kind of filter, or any of you who have new kits will have this kind of filter. We also used a canister filter in the past. The previous setup involved a canister filter. This is the aerator motor. That is the output from the chiller. Again, separated, the input on one end, the output on the other end, and that is the breeder basket. And I think that's probably a digital thermometer up there. So, last point, this is what you need to do to your filter intake. There are lots of different materials that you can use to do this. I have become very familiar with what they sell at Joann's. Yes, this is a 9-inch square of nylon netting. Would work just fine. Kind of push that around the end of, and then you just need either a rubber band or a zip tie or a twist tie to fasten it. If you use something that is too fine, it will get clogged up constantly because all the debris that's in your tank will get sucked into it, and you'll have to clean it regularly. If you use something that's too coarse, your fish will get pulled through it. And when your fish are very young, they're not strong swimmers, so they can get sucked in easily.
I had raised salmon forever, and I used pantyhose on there. Is that too fine?
I think so. I haven't personally had that experience, but I've been told that it's too fine.
It worked for salmon, and as I said to Tripp, it was this awesome cultural literacy because Vermont children, in my experience, had no idea what pantyhose were and what you could even do with them. So like when I pulled them out,
oh, that's cute.
It was pretty comical.
That's I like that. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is give our attention to Bob, and you may want to move over in that direction. You might want to swivel around. You may want to bring your chair closer, because Bob is actually going to walk you through the process with the actual equipment that he brought.
First thing is this strong table. Next thing is, well, where do I locate this thing? Well, probably if I came into your classroom and it looked like this, I would say, hey, don't put it near the windows, just because the windows are going to give you some trouble. So why not go more against a wall that doesn't have windows? But if it does have windows, maybe you can do this, keep the shades down all the time. Keep in mind that the eventual appearance of this will be, it'll be enclosed in insulation. which will also keep some of the light off. As the fish mature, this part will be, the insulation will be off during the day, and it can be the top part, insulation can be off during the day. So some light will get in, and possibly if you have too much light in the room, you'll start to get some algae buildup. But that being said, okay, so here we are. First thing you do, put insulation board down, the base down first, and center your tank on top of it. If you don't do that, you're gonna be giving yourself trouble for a lot of the time. So try to do that. Try to get everything in the center. Okay. Because once again, you put the 450 pounds of water in, you're not moving anything. All right. So now we have again insulation. I have. I think Joe has on his website where or the drawings that you can cut your insulation. And this is all cut from insulation. I get mine at Home Depot. Let's see if I can have it. Yeah, here's a piece of it. What I found, this is made out of 1.5 inch. This is 1 inch because all once Home Depot stopped selling the 1.5 inch. So I've changed my designs to 1 inch, which is just as well. It's not quite as rigid, but it's just as well. But you can see it has foil on the outsides and styrofoam on the inside. And the kids like to pick away at it. So what I found is you tape up the edges so the kids don't have the idea. And I usually get a roll of tape that looks like this. I don't know if you ever dealt with this. It's peeled off. It's metal tape, and you stick the thing on there, and pretty simple, pretty easy to work with. And you can beautify anything. The kids write something on there. You don't like it, just take a piece of tape and done. Okay, so. Insulation, one sheet will cover the whole tank if cut to the drawings that I have provided. Now, next thing to decide is which side does my chiller go on? Here's what the chiller box looks like. This black box, and it has the arm that has to go in the water. So you have to decide, are a bunch of cabinets over here? Is this not possible to put the chiller on this side? Then you might select this side to put it on. And what you have, this is your side panel. So either if you put on this side, you can put the panel like this. If you put on this side, you'll put again one of the slit in on this side, so you can again put your chiller arm in the water. Okay, so since I have the chiller here, I'm going to put obviously this panel here and have a chiller right there. So first thing I do is I put that on, and now again it's flopping around, so you can tape the base of it if you want to hold it in place. Now my kind of rule of thumb is the chiller and the filter go in the same end of the tank. The reason for that is there's more water movement around the filter. The chiller head, which Joe calls the business end, goes in like this, and this is darn cold. It's probably 32 degrees or lower as it's trying to chill your water. This pumps out kind of one temperature into this chiller coil, and it monitors what the temperature of the water is, and eventually it'll stop circulating any fluid through here once the water temperature reaches the set point. So ice will form on this. So I put the filter here, which is giving water movement, which will cause water movement over that. And I also put the bubbler right underneath it, as you'll see as I lay this out. So first thing is, okay, it's the chiller coil. And the chiller coil, if you leave the lines back here, the chiller coil will swing front. I try to distribute it so it's kind of straight. And I'll put tape on this thing to hold it. I'll put some more of this tape on this to hold it in place. So so now you set this the chiller in place. Now the chiller, you're not done with the chiller yet, because the chiller has strange looking things like this that come with it. And yet, coming out of the back of the chiller is a plug, a short plug that can plug to your wall. But you don't want to do that because you want to control the temperature. And that's what this is. This is your temperature control here. So you got to make sure that the plug, first of all, you'll find your chiller box and you won't see any plug hanging out. Well, it's stuck up in the back here. So kind of reach up in the back and get that plug out. And here's your plug. Regular 110 plug. Your 110 volt plug. Okay, then you look at these other items that come with your box. And let me see if I can get this baby off here. It has two parts to it. There. Okay, two parts. One part looks like another plug, and this is the actual one that goes into your wall, 110 volts, and this connects to your chiller. So now you connect those together, and like that. And now this box will control your temperature. And you'll read in your manual, your chiller manual, exactly how to set this up so you can get 52 degrees or whatever. And also you can trick the kids and have Fahrenheit or centigrade, and also if you don't watch it, if you don't tell it you want it to cool rather than heat, because this has other options in it, you'll have it set on heating rather than cooling, and it may not work properly. So make sure you get this set up right, and therefore you'll have the proper conditions in your water. This is the sensor part of your chiller unit. It's right there. That guy on the end is monitoring what is happening in the tank. What is the temperature going on in the tank? And eventually I'll show you where to set that. But basically, if you're cooling here, you want to have this sensor way down here, so that if you have it here, all it's going to do is, as soon as it sees the little bit of water in here get the right temperature, it shuts off. And down here, maybe 10 degrees warmer. So you want to have this guy down here, so you've got the right temperature, so it's constant temperature through the tank. So I'll show you how to put that a little later on. So now you got the chiller in, and the next thing you got to do is start to get insulated on. You've decided what end of the tank you want your chiller. That's why you got the slit there. So now you'll put the other side here. And then the back looks something like this. Now, you see this little cutout here and this extra little bit of build out on your tank, on your insulation. And I don't ever put that in place in this spot. I have the cutout on this piece of styrofoam, but I never put this actual build out in place until I get to the school and find out which end of the tank is going to have the filter and of course the chiller. Because if it's going to be on this end, then we just turn it around and put this build out on the other side so it sticks out there. Hopefully you get the idea of what I'm saying. And so now, here's the back of the tank. And I'll put a little small piece of tape to hold this guy in place. And I think it's a good idea. Once you have decided which end is going to get what, that you tape these together like this, like I do. You don't have to be, the whole edge does not have to be taped. Tape them together, but also make sure that you don't have a big gap in the back here. I mean, this can happen. This can move. Somebody comes home and pushes this. You'll start to get gaps behind here, and both sides will get gaps. And now you'll have an area where airflow gets up underneath, And when you get a nice hot humid day, or just get a humid day, all at once you're going to get moisture condensing on here, and you're going to call your janitor and say, I got a water leak around here because the water is collecting on my floor. And I had this situation with one of my tanks here. The teacher kept sending me those pictures, water on the floor, talking to the janitor. Janitor putting up pipelines and all that. And she said, she finally got to me and said, Bob, your tank's leaking. This guy got a leak in my tank. I came there and I geez, I guess you do got a leak. But then I said, geez, look at that gap. Let's pull this gap together. Let's hold it tight. And now, how do we keep this from sliding? Well, I put a piece of tape down here at the bottom. Now it's not going to slide anymore, and I do that on the other side. So now this holds together. So there's your insulation around. You've stopped having a gap back here. And as soon as she and I fixed this gap so there was no more gap there, the water problem went away. So I think that tells me that was a problem, and that was a fix. Next thing is our filter. Okay, when you get your filter out of your box, you're going to have pieces. Keep in mind the filter does just that. It filters, but it does a couple different types of filtering. It does coarse material filtering, and then it does bacterial filtering. So it has to have media and inside of it to do this. Here's a block of porous foam that you'll get with your filter. This one has been used a couple of years, and so they get a little dirty, but they still, this has been cleaned, and it still stains the white, totally white. And when you first get your filter, you see totally white, but it gets stained, and I don't worry about it as long as you do a good job of cleaning it. Soap and water keeps at the end of the year, just keep squeezing it until finally it comes out clean. Okay, so your filter box is right here. So first thing you do is this goes on the bottom. Your coarse filter is on the bottom. So push that guy right in there. Now, also you'll notice when you get your filter out of the box, you might find this little tab rattling around here. You know, not very big. And you wonder, what the heck do I do with this? It gave me some piece of junk here with it. No. Because what happens when you set this filter on the back of your tank, it'll, depending on the tank wall thickness, with the wall thickness we have, this is going to sit crooked. Instead of sitting straight up and down, how you want the filter to work, it's going to sit crooked a little bit. So this little tab here goes into a pre-made hole in the bottom. If I can find it. There we go. Goes in the pre-made hole in the bottom, and you adjust it so this sits straight on the back. So now let me just this guy in place. Okay, so this is the hole for the filter. Put the cable down through and put this in the back. There you go. Now, if by chance you lose that little tab, many times I find it in the pocket inside the filter when I get it pulling out of the box. But it could be rattling around any place in that box. So be aware. If you lose it, I just take some of this foam, which I'll have a little extra at the end of my cutting activity. I'll take a little chunk of foam and tape it right where that. I'll tape it right here on the bottom. And so make a little bump there, so that when I do sit my filter in there, it sits pretty straight. All right. Now, next thing we have to do, we've done the coarse filtering, and we have to do fine filtering. Well, you'll get with your with your filter unit, you'll get carbon, bag of carbon. This is charcoal. This is good for a month use. So every month you got to change the bag. You got to get new bag. We found out in the classroom, people in the past have found, what a pain in the neck, they always have to change this and go to buy a new bag. It's dirty and kind of don't want to do that. They found other cleaner carbon, charcoal, that does a better job, and it's called ChemiPure. And so the ChemiPure, you open the container, you pop the cover, and here's a bag of dirty stuff. This is dirty. You have to take this, put it under a faucet, and clean it until it finally runs clean. Then you take it and put it on top of your bag. On top of the filter foam. So this is going to be like a sandwich you're building inside this unit. So here's this little tray, I'll call it. And inside that, you're going to put, I'm not going to, well, maybe I will, sure. You're going to get 2 of these. 1, 2. Put those on there. Put on there. Second one. Second one. Then on top of that, so this cleans your water more. The chunks go out of there. Now some more cleaning, some chemicals will be taken out by your charcoal. And now we're going to get bacterial cleaning. And I always talk to the kids about, let's see, where's my, I pass some of these around. These are like tubes, like ceramic tubes. I pass them around and ask the kids, the students, what they think these are. And a lot of guesses, but what they are, they're houses for your bacteria. You're going to be adding bacteria to the tank. The bacteria is going to say, where am I going to stay? One of the places they picked is here. And so this goes on top of this. So there's your sandwich. You got your filter sandwich. And this whole thing then goes into your filter box. Now what happens here before I put it in, I'll also put the intake tube for the filter. Again, as Joe said, something on the bottom to keep the little guys from being pulled up through there. I just use household screen. I get, a fiberglass screen I get at one of the Lowe's or Home Depot. Okay, so now this goes in here. Goes into, let's see here. Okay, so now I have this set up in the right place. This has a little pin that sticks up here that you can adjust low speed and high speed. Oops, I got this backwards. Sorry. Get this, change this again. Put this around this way. Okay, here's a control here where you can adjust the flow in your filter. And again, read your booklet that comes with your filter and tells you exactly how to do that. Okay, so now this goes in here, and this can be pushed one way for slow flow in your filter, and one for fast. I usually recommend just turn on fast and leave it there. There's no reason to adjust slow and fast. Okay, so your filter's here. What happens? Again, water comes up through here, goes down the tube. There's a motor in the bottom, or a pump on the bottom, that pushes the water over here, and then the water will flow up into here, come to the top, and then go as a waterfall into your tank. So this goes in here like this. And make sure this is all the way down. There. Okay, it's all the way down. Many times you'll see that because of the stack up of things, maybe a couple of these tubes will be sticking a little bit above the water. don't worry about it. Most of them will be below the water, and the bacteria will find its way into it. So now you got your filter in, you got your chiller going, and now the next thing is your air. You know, that's again the things you need. You need to keep the water cold, you need to keep it clean, and you need to keep the oxygen in it. So here's your air pump.
Could I say something, Bob, about the filter? Correct me if I'm wrong. Make sure you go by the manual that Joe puts out when you assemble that, because the one that comes with it is for tropical fish generally. And some of the things you have to take out, it's a different setup than this.
Okay.
That comes with the directions with the filter you get.
We got just a couple minutes, Bob.
Okay, so air filter pump. This is the air pump. Important thing is right here, you're going to get this check valve, and comes off hard and comes off. No. There. Okay. Check valve comes in a little plastic case. You'll get the check valve. It has an arrow on it. You want the air to go from here into the tank. So make sure the arrow is pointing the correct way on your tube, on your check valve, and you put it in the tube proper way. What this keeps from happening is the siphoning. If by chance power goes off, the tube's small enough, siphoning will happen, and actually water will back up, come out of here, go on your floor over the weekend when power was out. You don't want that to happen. Next thing is your air stone, how the air gets distributed. Here's what the air stone looks like. As I said before, I'm not going to take it apart and hook it up, but it goes right underneath, smack dab underneath your chiller. You have to soak the air stone for like 20 minutes, a half hour in the water before you turn it on, because you don't want, because the air stone won't work properly. It'll just bubble from one end. If you soak it all, get it all properly prepared, the whole stone will have bubbles come out of it. I just leave my pump right on top of the chiller. So these are all connected. Then, as I said, I talked about your sensor for your chiller is right here, and I always put the sensor right over here. I cut a slit into my foam and put the sensor right there. Let it hang in there. Never have to touch it. One last thing that you have is your egg basket. This again, when you first get your eggs, if you throw them in there, you'll lose them. You won't know where they are. So you put the egg basket and you put it away from where all the water action is happening, because what will happen if you keep it near the bubbler, air bubbles will be caught underneath this and cause the eggs to jiggle around that thing. So I put them way down at the other end, and you're fine. You know, where you see it. Okay, so chiller, everything.
Can I just jump in, Bob?
Go ahead.
Bob has modified his egg basket, and you should too. And if you want, I've brought some pieces of netting that are cut to the right size, and there's an appendix in the manual that will explain how to make the modification that Bob made. This netting is super fine, and it will trap every slight bit of food or waste, and it will develop a very unhealthy culture for bacteria in the tank. This is coarse enough so that the fine stuff falls through it. So if you want one of these, take one.
One other thing you'll get with it is your digital readout. Look at it any place you want to. I mean, this is what the students like to look at. They like to come over here and push the button and, oh yeah, look at this, and push all kinds of things. And so,
but don't put it on top of your chiller coils.
Yes, that's right. Put it any place you want to. This can hook on here on a little screw if you want to. What I did on my tanks, I have these screw-in. I don't know if you've ever seen these. They'll hang pictures on your wall of sheetrock. Little screw-in jobbies, and I screw these into my foam, and I hook screws on. This is how I hook the front of my insulation.
Excuse me.
This also has what I forgot to bring, the sticker. So this goes right on the front. This comes around here. Hook it on so it doesn't go anyplace. Same way here. And now that's the way you'll look for till the eggs hatch. Well, I put the top on until the eggs hatch, and
The eggs and the early alevin stage need darkness. So too much light will be fatal.
Okay, there's kind of the way it looks. And
And do you have any Novaqua Plus over there, Bob?
then we have, when you first put water in, you got to have water conditioner. You got to make sure you can take the carbon out, parts of carbon out,
And other
the
things.
chlorine out.
Chlorine, copper, heavy metals of all sorts.
Then here's the old style night out too. And this is your bacteria. You're gonna get them in little different looking containers, but it's still the same good stuff. And you'll get more information about this, the bacteria, how to handle this.
We write about that in the manual, and Rob Kramer's going to talk about that in a few minutes.
This is the baby. What I tell my teachers is 20 minutes. You know, when you first get your eggs, the students want to see them. So 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon. Take this off. Let them look at them. Let them enjoy them, and then put this back on again. Once they hatch, it's about a week into hatching, then you can take it off more like 20 minutes twice in the morning, 20 minutes twice in the afternoon. Let them see some of the fish in the basket. As the fish get very close to feeding, then you want this off the whole day, and this off the whole day. So the fish get used to light, used to get where the light is, where to go up to feeding.
Okay, Bob, we're going to finish off with a couple of slides. If at all possible, avoid one of these GFI plugs. What happens when the GFI, when you lose power? Everything goes off, right? What happens when the power comes back on? Everything stays off. Last year, Ludlow lost many fish because of this. If you have to use one of these, make sure you have an effective system in place so that you are notified as soon as the power goes off. And or have a plan such that your school's maintenance person presses the reset button immediately. You can't take the risk of not having your chiller and your filter working. Sometimes curious people can create problems, right? Put signs, do not turn off, do not touch, do not adjust, etc., etc. We've had, Guy Maroli came back from a Washington field trip, and he had 7 fish in his tank, and it was at 75 degrees because somebody unplugged something. It can happen. Don't cover all of your tank with gravel. Leave part of it. Some teachers don't use gravel at all. We recommend it. It becomes part of the bacteria culture environment. But leave some of your tank bottom clean, because that will show you how much waste is accumulating. If all the bottom is covered with gravel, you're not going to recognize how much waste you're creating. And waste is usually because you're not siphoning enough and you're overfeeding your fish. As Bob said, all water has to be treated with Novaqua Plus, both initially and subsequently when you add water. Put your hands in the tank as little as possible, and make sure that your hands don't have any lotions, hand sanitizer, or anything of that sort on them. and ideally they should be clean, soap-free, and dry when you do have to put them in the tank. You all will have a siphon for siphoning. If you attach it to a dowel or a yardstick, you can siphon without putting your hands into the tank, because the 55-gallon tanks are 21 inches deep. You would not be able to use that siphon without an extender like that. We have instructions on the pre-cycling process and on how to get your tank ready for your fish. But one thing is that you want the water in your tank to be as close to the water in the hatchery as possible. And that will probably be in the mid-40s. And we will send out bulletins on that so you can fine-tune the tank. Be proactive in removing dead eggs and dead fish, and there you will find some occasionally down, lost in the gravel. And we'll talk more about the swim-up process, but that is when you start feeding. Do not overfeed. You can, once your fish are eating, you can feed them as often as 5 or 7 times a day, but only a little bit. If you feed them and there's still food left floating on the surface after 5 or 10 minutes, scoop it out. They're going to eat eagerly and then they'll stop. Some teachers like to do it themselves. But the more responsibility you give to your kids, the better the program, in my opinion. They will take more pride in the project. They will invest more energy and attention in all of it. Sometimes you'll find that a cycle of rotational roles is a good idea. Some teachers just discover there are a few kids that are just incensed with enthusiasm, and you know how to assign responsibility to your students, but try not to do it for them. Try to get them to do it for their classmates. Data entry is very, very important. There's surprisingly little scientific literature on what we're doing, and we are trying to build a common set of knowledge. I guess you might call this a learning community together. And if you keep good records and send them to me at the end of the year, and everybody else does the same, a year from now we will have much better information to share with teachers. We have an Excel spreadsheet in the Google Docs folder, and there's a copy of it in the manual. And the first order of business, if there seems to be a problem, is kind of group problem solving with your students. What do we think is going on? A lot of times students come up with good explanations. But if all else fails, contact one of the other teachers whom you've got to know, who might have more experience than you, or who doesn't, who just likes problem solving, or contact one of us. We're now going to talk about water chemistry. And when I first started working on this program in 2012, I assumed that water chemistry was going to be the topic of all of my nightmares, and would be the major cause of mortality in our fish. And indeed, it is a potential catastrophic problem. I mean, you could lose all your fish if you had extreme ammonia or nitrite readings. But our experience, we did a SurveyMonkey survey last year of our teachers, and by far most mortality was not due to water chemistry. It was due to things like, power outages and not covering the filter intake, and especially missing the swim-up stage. But water chemistry is the second most concerning condition that we have to monitor and manage. And Rob, do you want to start with the water testing and the nitrogen cycle process? We are very fortunate to have Rob Kramer as one of our TIC support team members. Rob, as far as I know, may be the only person in this room who really knows what he's talking about when it comes to this stuff. He is a scientist who teaches at Dartmouth Medical School, and when a few of us have had conversations with him, I realized quickly that you could take all the rest of us together and what we knew and multiply it by a factor of 10, and it would still just be a fraction of what Rob knows. I'm a clinical psychologist. If you have depression or anxiety related to Trout in the Classroom, I'm your man. If you have water chemistry concerns, just listen to this guy.